This meeting.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Transition Bridge podcast. This is Debbie, your host, and this is the podcast where we come together to discover more about the purpose and the power of life's transitions. Transitions can sometimes show up as adversity in our lives and can bring challenges that we're not prepared for or even know how to respond to. Here's a quote I have to cover that. It's your reaction to adversity, not adversity itself, that determines how your life story will develop. I believe this is the heartbeat and the mindset of my guest today, Patrick Engasser. Patrick has been overcoming obstacles since the day he was born. And as someone who has been blind his entire life, he has developed a unique ability to solve problems, break through challenges in ways that few coaches can even understand. Patrick is a unique and a sought after motivational speaker, business coach, and life coach. And his story is one of determination, resilience, and relentless problem solving. From building a successful career in sales to leading and coaching a seven-figure sales team, Patrick has consistently overcome challenges and helped others do the same. With over 15 years of experience, Patrick is here to share the proven strategies he's learned over the years, and he's going to be able to help you turn your perceived roadblocks into assets, navigate around your blind spots, and reach your next level of success. Well, Patrick, welcome to the Transition Bridge podcast. It's a real honor to have you here with us today.
It's an honor to be here. What a beautiful introduction. Thank you so much.
Oh, you are so welcome. Well, I know there's been so many awards in your life, companies, top award for management excellence, and three times you were received an award for your outstanding leadership and your ability to coach others to achieve their goals. So I know today we're going to learn so much about you and we're going to learn so much from you. And so, in order to get us going, Patrick, can you just tell us about your life story and then how you became a coach? And then, of course, we're going to talk about your book today, which I can't wait to hear about. If I can do it, so can you.
Mhm.
So, yeah, so you were born blind.
Yep. So I was born in Buffalo, New York. Lived there most of my life. And my wife and my 3-year-old son and I just moved to Destin, Florida this past year. So that's been a new transition for us in a different way. But I was born in Buffalo, New York, totally blind, as you mentioned. I would say right off the bat, one of the advantages I probably had over other children who may have what some would consider a disability. My parents never held me back by the thoughts they put in my head. So they didn't ever teach me a mindset of limiting beliefs. And of course, there's always limiting beliefs that are put into our minds sometimes, most of the time by accident by the people around us. So I'm not saying that didn't exist at all, but my parents could have really gone out of their way to tell me that, hey, there's a very small uh, number of things that you can do. And that's not what they did. Instead, they said, hey, you're going to have to work harder in many ways. But if you want it badly enough, we'll help you in any way that we can. And you'll find others who will help you. And you really can make whatever you want happen. So they didn't know how that was going to happen. And I didn't really know what that was going to look like. But that I would just say for all the parents out there, my wife would tell you I'm super laser focused on that with my own son, who has sight, but just in general, telling him every day that, that he's special and that he can do whatever he wants if he puts one foot in front of the other and just keeps moving forward. So I think that's a big one, because I could have been held back right away with that. But I went to public school and then eventually went to Canisius University in Buffalo for communications and radio broadcasting. It's pretty much a guarantee that if you're born and raised in Buffalo, you become a Buffalo sports fan. It's part of the
Of
it's part of the
course.
cult it's part of the cult if you will. So
Yes.
and if not, they throw you out of the city. No, I'm just kidding, not really, but there's not a lot for you to talk about at parties. Let's put it that way. So. I obviously wasn't watching games on television. I would often be in the room with family, friends who had the TV on, were watching the game. But I fell in love with radio because it was my way of knowing what was going on in the game. And I found t television announcers don't always paint a really good picture of what's going on because,
True.
let's be honest, the people who are watching can see what's going on. So they may give you details that you're not necessarily noticing as an average fan. But the radio has no choice, right? If someone's a radio commentator or a play-by-play announcer, they have no choice but to give you a really really deep picture of what's going on. So
Right.
I would have headphones on and be listening to, Rick Jeanneret or Van Miller, and I was raised on those legends for both the Bills and the Sabres, listening to them. And so that really shaped me and my love for sports radio and wanting to get into radio because it was my connection, my way of connecting with the people around me who loved this entertainment of watching and experiencing Buffalo sports. And this was my way of doing it. So that's when I went to college. That's what I wanted to do, was be involved in either pregame, postgame, or color commentating in some way. And then I graduated in the 2008, during the 2008, 2009 financial apocalypse.
Oh, yeah.
So there weren't any jobs in radio in a small market like Western New York, in the sports, the sports arena, if you will. So I got into doing some call center work, collections, debt collections, which I really didn't like doing. It was a job. It was something to pay off the student loans and start paying my bills. And I really didn't. It was the one thing in my life, Debbie, that I really didn't like doing. I really didn't enjoy it, and I'm glad looking back on it. I was not so happy about it at the time, but looking back on it, it forced me to look for something totally different and to really get out of my comfort zone. And that's how I ended up finding sales and insurance. I met the former regional sales coordinator for a Fortune 200 company. Many of you probably heard of it, Aflac, in Buffalo, New
Yeah.
York. And that's how my career in sales started. And if I didn't, if I wasn't so, if I'd been just been comfortably miserable, I don't think I would have ever, completely changed what I was doing. But because I was really unhappy with what I was doing and the path my life was on, at least in terms of my career, it really made me want to shake things up. And so I started to think, hey, this might be something I want to do. And that's kind of how the story took a turn and I ended up in sales. Nobody ends up in insurance sales by choice or, says, hey, that's what I'd love to do when I grow up, unless their parents do it. They kind of fall into the industry, and it was no different for me.
Wow. I mean, first, I would just want to say kudos to your parents. They never put a limit on you, and
Mhm.
they took that word impossible and just made it possible for you. And I can just see and understand now why you're such a successful coach, because you created your business, your career, you succeeded, and then it was like, okay, I'm comfortable. Let's get to that next step. What is the next thing I can do? And you seem to want to experience new things. And is this when you decided you wanted to become a coach?
Yeah, so great question. So I struggled early on in the insurance industry, as a lot of people do, and
Hmm.
really just being unwilling to quit was the only thing that kept me in the industry. Is sometimes I'm like a snapping turtle. I just for whether I have a good reason or not, if it's something I want, I just hang on,
Wow.
and that's really what kept me in the industry for the first couple of years until I hired a business and sales coach, and that totally changed my career. I went from out of about 615, 620 agents in the operation I was in, sales operation, into to number one in new account sales. I was in the 500s prior to that third year. Probably, I don't remember exactly, but low 500s out of 600 and change. And I went from that in terms of new account sales to number one, the number one account closer in a year. And a huge, if not the only reason, but a huge part of that was hiring a business and sales coach who really gave me the confidence and the mindset of what I needed to change, but also some strategies and techniques that really gave me that confidence that, hey, now I am armed with the ability that I needed in order to get from where I was, which was failing in the industry, to success. And once I had that confidence and I had some strategies that could help me get it get the job done, it turned my career around. That is where my love for coaching began because I saw the difference it made in me and I experienced it personally. It was a big turning point for me in my career, the turning point. I would not have survived. I firmly believe that in the industry for more than another year or so had I not found that coach and decided to go look for one and seek one out. I read a book by Jack Canfield called Success Principles, and his question
Yes.
was, "Why don't you have a coach?" Right? And that was the one question. All the other tips meant something to me, but that's the one that really stuck with me. Because I'm like, Olympic athletes have a coach, sports athletes, whatever sport have a coach, top musicians have one. And I couldn't answer that question with anything other than, well, I don't know. I guess I should probably go get one. And so I decided to do that. I'm like, I don't, I argued with myself as a lot of times we do when it comes to making an investment in our business or in ourselves when we don't have the money or the financial resources. I don't have the money. How am I going to afford it? But in the back of my head, I knew I couldn't afford not to do it. So I went and found a coach, interviewed a handful of people, and my coach at the time, Steve, changed my life in that he taught me things that really put me on track to be more successful. And that's where my love for coaching was born. And then getting into management, as you mentioned, a leadership role the
Yes.
following year, that really was when I started to coach other people and mentor others. And
Mm.
got a big thrill out of having my name or myself be in some way tied to someone else's to testimonial that hey, they were able to have success or close a deal or help someone in the business because of something I taught them. And that was way more of a high for me than closing the deal myself. And that's when there was no looking back. It was, I was always going to be in coaching in some capacity. And then about 5 years ago, during COVID, I decided that I was going to start doing this on my own as my own business. So, all those things really led up to the coaching I do today. But it started with a coach who made a huge impact on my life.
Well, that truly is the power of coaching. And I agree with you, Patrick. I think so many people underestimate the power of a coach. I'm a coach myself, and
Mhm.
I look to others to coach me because what it does for me is it gives me accountability, as
Yep.
well as the strategies. I have to come back and say, I did this or I didn't do that.
Yep.
And it helps you grow, it helps you create. So I'm really glad that you shared that because I do believe coaching can be underestimated. So to everyone who's listening, first I'm going to tell you you got to reach out to Patrick and he's going to share with you how to do that later. So
Mhm.
so Patrick, so having a coach, were there some like mental habits that he helped you develop so you could build independence in a world that's not really designed for you?
Yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it. I think the biggest thing for me was getting out of my own way. As I said, I had, which is probably the case for all of us in some
Right.
capacity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think for me, I had this idea, even if I wouldn't have said it out loud, I had this idea in the back of my head that my blindness was a liability. So even though my parents and no one had taught me that, I just had this idea that I was in an industry where 9 out of 10 people don't succeed anyway. I couldn't drive a car. Uber wasn't a thing in Buffalo yet, so it was take a cab or take a bus, and I couldn't afford to take a cab. So I didn't have the, let's put it this way, I didn't have the cash flow to do that at the time. I hate to use the
Sure.
word I couldn't afford, but that was the truth. So I was taking the bus to my appointments. And so I like, this is holding me back, or it's the first time I really faced my blindness, I think, in any real way, because I've been able to find other ways around the challenges that you mentioned earlier before. This was the
Mm-hmm.
first time I was like, this is something that's really hard, this business. And I'm starting off at a huge disadvantage. At least that's the way I saw it early on. I think the biggest thing my coach, as you asked the question, I think the biggest thing that he helped me shift was that mindset that this is a liability, and got me to really see what if it wasn't? What if it was an asset? What if people wanted to talk to me because I walked in and I was different? The first thing he said is the biggest thing you don't realize yet is that majority of people who work with or talk to sales professionals who are business owners, if you're doing B2B sales, and this is true for working with individuals as well outside the business world. They get a ton of calls every day. They get a ton of people walking in and introducing themselves every day. And most of the time they don't even give that person a chance to tell them what they do. And if you're different, you're going to be someone who kind of disrupts that loop, if you will.
Right.
And I didn't really think of that. And then I started, once he started, he opened up that new possibility for me, the mindset shift that maybe there was a way that this could be an asset. I started to notice. And for your listeners, I'm sure they've all had this experience, and you too, Debbie, that when you start looking for something, you see it everywhere. It sounds funny
Oh,
using that expression for me, but we've all heard the red car analogy. You buy a red car, you're thinking about buying a red car. There aren't any red cars on the road until you look around and you start focusing on it and you realize there's red cars everywhere.
oh, I was
And
just thinking about that. I was just thinking that's the best analogy, the car.
yeah. And it's true for anything. Like if you feel like you need to get something repaired in your house. You don't know a plumber until then, and then there's ads for plumbing everywhere, right? They were there all along. You just weren't paying attention. You weren't focused and dialed in on that. So once I had my antennas up and I started focusing on it, I started seeing opportunities where my blindness could be an asset. I realized that I was walking into businesses with a guide dog. And I realized people really like dogs. They're cute. It's a
Oh,
great conversation starter. Not everybody does, but I would say 8 out of 10 people at least that I meet
sure.
really like dogs. So I'm walking in with something that no one else has. Didn't even think about that before. The dog was a flashing neon sign, as I like to say on my forehead, that said blind salesperson approaching, right? But then once I flipped that script on its head and changed that paradigm, and nothing changed. The only thing that changed was my mindset that now I'm walking in with a huge advantage. It went from the whispers in the office of other agents saying, how is this guy going to make it? And I have very good hearing, so I heard a lot of that.
Oh gosh.
How's this guy going to make it with all all the things that he has that are against him that are even harder than everyone else, and 9 out of 10 people don't make it. To a year later, after working with a coach, I had people saying, well, of course he's the number one account closer. He's got a dog, like he's got an advantage.
Oh gosh.
Nobody saw that advantage earlier, though, including myself. And once I shifted that mindset, it made a big difference. Once I realized that I had a different story, you talked about the story earlier. My story was something that I didn't think about it when I started, but that people wanted to know more about. Like, how did you get into this industry? How are you doing it? When I got to a point where I could afford to take an Uber, a taxi cab, my one driver that I used to hire to work with me regularly always used to laugh because he'd say, every time I drop you off, he says, I just get a huge chuckle about the fact that after you walk in and nobody's with you, they always walk to the window and look out to see, did you drive yourself? Or did, or did you walk in off the street or what happened? And then they see me and they kind of go, oh, okay, I get it. But he's like, there was a thing that, there's something that people didn't think about, but they were curious about it because I was different. So it was really changing that liability mindset into an asset. So to your audience, my question would always be to anybody, what is your biggest challenge or one of your biggest challenges that you feel in your head might be holding you back? And how can you flip that script or change that paradigm to say, you know what, this could actually be an asset? How can I change what I might see typically as my liability or something that would hold me back as my superpower? And my blindness, which we can get into more in a few minutes, as we go through the interview, is definitely turned into my superpower, but it wouldn't be something someone would know if they just met me and they didn't know my story.
No, that is so powerful. And, sharing with, what you just said, Patrick, about your excuse was your blindness was a liability and the change of your mindset. I could just hear the confidence in your voice. And I can just imagine you walking into the room so full of confidence and courage because your paradigm shifted. So now in your coaching, what are some of the excuses, the common excuses that you find with clients, and how do you help them dismantle it?
I think that there's a lot of different ones, but I think the biggest one that people have it's some type of a mind block, right? It's something that's a
Right.
mindset block. It's not usually
Mhm.
skill set. I thought when I got into coaching, it's funny because for me it was a mindset thing, a block in my, in terms of um, my subconscious mind. I found that the same thing is true for everybody else. Those walls are not usually built by lack of strategy or skills. Did I need to learn some sales skills? Sure. But the big obstacle to me was how I was thinking about and viewing myself and why someone wouldn't want to do business with me. The skills are, I don't want to say they're easy, but I could teach anyone how to sell if they want it badly enough. And if they're willing to work through whatever um, whatever if they have a fear of public speaking or they're not great at interpersonal communication. Like it may take some time, but we can work through all those things. But if their mindset is, I'm never going to be good at this, the rest is going to be very difficult. So I think it's most of it is limiting beliefs that come from a past, um, I don't want to say past trauma, but it could be that or some type of a past perceived failure. And so people think,
Mhm.
oh, well, I can't sell because, when I sold Girl Scout cookies door to door as a kid, somebody told me no, and then, I stopped doing it because I was afraid that other people were going to tell me no. And they might not even get that deep, but there's something in their past that usually creates a block, a mental block, where they feel like that's going to prevent them from doing what they need to do in order to be successful. I can't do I can't succeed at the level I want because I don't have time, because I'm a parent and I have to put that time into my child. And of course, that's family should be the number one or right up there at the top priority. But there's also, as I always point out, there's thousands, if not millions of parents, but certainly tens of thousands who succeed all over the world at careers while building a business around the life that they want so that they can have be there for their children. So there's always a way around it. It's just a lot of times it's not the way that's the problem. It's they can't see the way, pun intended, because they're so focused on the blockade in front of them or that obstacle. And usually that's all in their mindset.
That is powerful, and that is so true. We focus more on what is not working on instead of trying to find the possibility or the potential or to get around it. So I really love how you shared that. So what was the moment then when made you realize that you needed to write your book?
So back to real quick, back to what you just said. I just thought of a quote.
Sure.
Wayne Gretzky, one of the best hockey players to ever play, always said
Hmm.
that most hockey players or good hockey players would see when they would go in to take a shot, they would see the goaltender and they would see the goaltender's pads. He says, I never saw that. I saw the net behind it. And I think it's the same thing as what you just said is really the difference of shifting. Do you see the obstacle or do you see the opportunity? And early on, I would say I saw the obstacle. I'd say most of the time, I'm imperfect at it like everybody else, but most of the time now, where most people see challenges, I see opportunity. So in terms of my book, um, it's one of those things that, and I know everybody who's listening might not relate to this. I'm a Christian. I'm a spirituality. My spiritual life is very important to me. So for me, I think I can't explain it other than it's a God thing. Like everywhere I went for about a year, for whatever reason, who I told any part of my story to, people would be like, you need to write a book. I
Mm.
mean, I met a lady on an airplane I haven't talked to since. And 3 minutes into our conversation, I don't even remember what I told her. She's like, you need to write a book.
Oh
And
gosh.
eventually, after a while, I was just like, all right, God, I get it. Thanks. I'll write the book. So, and I have no idea, how I'm going to start it or what it's going to look like. But I really wrote the book from the perspective of how I can make an impact on other people. Like, I didn't write it to make $1 million. I was already having what most people would say is a decent amount of success in sales and then in my new coaching business. Um, but I really looked at it as if I could tell my story and it would make a difference for somebody else who was where I used to be and wasn't where I am now in terms of their thinking and they had these limiting beliefs. If it could unlock or break the chains on some of that, that would be worth it for me, even if it was just one person. The biggest moment I would say, Debbie, that made me realize that is I got off a stage once. I was speaking to a group of entrepreneurs. Um, there were probably about 300 people there. And I got off stage, and a few minutes after, I had a couple people, a number of people coming up to me saying, "Hey, can I, get my picture with you?" Talking to me. Thanks. It was inspiring. But I had one lady who came up to me not long after I got off stage, and she gave me a hug, and she's like, I have some things going on in my life, and I've wanted to start my own business for a really long time. I know what business it would be. I'd like to do like a skincare and makeup business, but I really feel like I've always felt like there were things that were holding me back. And she's like, after you told your story, I realized that if you can do it, I can do it. And that's
Oh,
where I'd heard that before and I've said that before to my sales agents that if I can do it, you can do it. But when she said that without me saying that on stage, I'm like, okay, we got a book title and I need to tell this story because if it's making that big of an impact, I'm holding people back by not telling the story. And that's the biggest thing. I think for me, I always felt like, why would anyone want to read my story? Like, I
mm.
think it was just just this thought of like, I don't know. I'm like, I guess I've had success in a lot of areas of business and sales and leadership, but who wants to read my story? And then I started realizing that it wasn't about me. When she said that, it flipped things for me. And I realized, Patrick, this isn't about you. It's about if other people can hear your story using a different forum and a different platform, being a book, and they read it. Maybe they never come to your talk, but they never hear you speak, but they sit down, they read your book, and it changes their perspective on something. They then have the power to change their life. Because I'm not going to change anybody's life, whether it's someone I coach, it's someone who reads my book, it's someone who hears me speak, if it's someone who listens to this podcast. Someone does change their life because of this conversation or because of my book. I didn't do that, they did it. But if I can do something to remove a block or to change their perspective where they have that shift in that moment and say, you know what? If he can do what he's doing, I can do what I want to do. Then that to me is worth um, all the fun time that went into sitting down and writing it for all those hours.
I I love that. And God has a definite way of getting our attention when he wants us
Mhm.
to do something. So I'm grateful for that lady on the plane and the one who came up to you after you spoke because you got the whole title of your book. I love it.
Me
If I
too.
can do it, so can you. It's inspiration for eliminating excuses, overcoming challenges, and succeeding in business and life. So I have a question, and
Mhm.
you may have already answered it, but who did you write this book for? The person who's stuck, the person who's doubting, or the person who's afraid? Or all of the above?
Yeah, I'd say D, all the above. That was my favorite answer on tests was D, all the above. If it's a D, all the above, it's got to be the answer. But really, in this case, I think that's the case. I think it will help, at least that's my hope and my prayer is it will help someone who is stuck. And it doesn't even have to be in business and sales. It could, there are tips in my book. It's meant to be a quick read. So there's 20 tips that have helped me. These are the concepts and the strategies and the mindset shifts I've made in my life that have helped me get from where I was when I was stuck to who I am and where I am now. You can use these not only in business, sales, and leadership. There's kind of that's kind of the layout of the book is it's probably designed for that person, but you can apply these tips and strategies in every area of life. Like one of the things I talk about is how, if you start your day with something positive, it's a very simple concept, but I call it breakfast for your brain. If you start your day with something positive first thing in the morning, you will have a totally different day. If you create a habit that you're going to either read 10 pages of a positive book or you're going to go on your favorite video platform and watch a motivational talk, or you're going to, turn on a positive audio and listen to it in your car, or listen to an audiobook, whatever it is. If it's even positive music that makes you feel, more uplifting in the morning. If you start your day with that as opposed to, listening or watching the news, or reading something that's negative or just jumping into your day and starting with a meeting that might be negative. It'll change everything for you. I mean, it's amazing how that one thing, um, changed, for me, for my life. It's like working out first thing in the morning. If you can do that while doing something positive, even better. But for me, that one tip is something you don't have to be a business professional or a sales professional or a business executive to do it. You could be someone who, is a waiter or waitress at a restaurant. It's like, oh, today I
Mhm.
know it's going to be a stressful day. It's a holiday. I know it's going to be really busy. You start your day with something positive. It's going to shift your mindset if you let it, and it's going to change the way you start your day, just like anything else. The way you start, once you have momentum, it's far harder to slow that down or stop it than it is if you don't have it. So starting your day with something positive is a tip I've been sharing with coaching members for years and that I share in the book that anybody can apply. Many of the other 20 tips uh, can be applied to life in general, not just business or coaching or sales.
Well, I love that because habits are so important. And to have a good, healthy habit like that in the morning, it really does set your day off with such a positive outlook. So I
Mhm.
want to pick your coaching brain for a minute on topics that I think are really important to people. How do you coach people in I can't even okay, I'm stuttering here. How do we coach people with their time, how they invest their time?
Mm.
And also a big one is procrastination.
Mhm. Yeah, you're gonna have to cut me off at some point on the investment of time because that's one of my favorite topics. But I find that early on in most people's businesses or lives in general, this is true of me as well, that it was about financial success, right? I wanted to prove to myself and build a better life for me and my future family financially. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing. It's a good goal, as long as you don't take it to a crazy extreme where that's the only thing that matters. And your desire to have success becomes, a worship or love of money. But I would say that as time goes on for a lot of people, certainly for me and most of the people that I coach, most of my amazing coaching members, it shifts to their time being their most valuable asset. At some point, they realize they can make more money, but they can't ever make more time. And so that is something that I really focus on, even if it's not someone's main motivation early on, is I try to sprinkle that in as much as I can when I'm coaching someone to say, hey, let's be more efficient with our time. Like, how does your day look from start to finish? Walk me through what that looks like. Are we using our most valuable asset to the best of our ability? And the better you get at taking care of your time, right? We all have,
Hmm.
what is it, um, 86,400 seconds, I think it is in the day, right? And we all have the same amount of time. 24 hours, no matter who we are. How are we utilizing that time? And that's one of the things that separates people who are very successful and live a very rich life. And I don't just mean financially, I mean in terms of their relationships, their family life, their marriage, if they're married, or their dating life, whatever it is. When they start to really understand the value of their time, things change in terms of how they use it. And when they use it better, and invest that time properly in the things that are going to bring them results in the area they want in their life, then they start to have greater success in all of those areas. I would say really asking a coaching member what do you want your life to look like? And a lot of times that's a really difficult question because people don't tend to ask us that on a regular basis, but it's a question I ask all the time. Like, what do you want your life to look like? A year from now, what would life look like if I had a magic wand? I don't, but if I
Uh-huh.
did and we could make that happen, what does it look like? What will need to change in order for that to happen? Are we investing our time in the inputs that will make those outputs happen? Are we investing our time in the things that are going to move us, the strategies, the different activities that are going to move us toward that life? Or are we just kind of drifting around aimlessly? And I think people, once they start to think about it, they're like, well, I'm using my time wisely in some areas, but not in others. And I would say the last thing I would say on this is focusing on, we've all heard of the 80/20 rule, but the
Right.
idea that the majority of results, whether it be business success or financial or relationships, the majority of your success is going to come from 20, 25%, 15% the things that you're doing, the things you're focusing on are going to bring you 70, 80, 90% of your results. That's almost always the case with pretty much everybody I work with. And it's, are we focusing on that 20% that are bringing us the 80% of results, or are we wasting time? And it's okay to spend a little time, but are we investing a ton of time on the 80% of stuff that's going to bring us 15 or 20 or 25% of our results? Most of the time that paradigm is flipped, and we need to shift it and get closer to the, hey, I'm pouring in the majority of my time I'm investing in the 20% that's going to bring me the big results in my business or in my career, in my relationships, in my marriage, my relationship with my kids, whatever that looks like. And that is one of the biggest things you can change today. And it takes some time and it takes some understanding of how it works. And that's what I help people do. But that is one of the biggest things I do to help people get exponential growth a whole lot faster than they would have otherwise.
Oh, I can understand how that could happen. And I think most of us don't even realize, unless we take time to evaluate our day, what we are investing our time in. We may not
100%.
even see that we are spending too much time on either TV, social media, which to a degree is okay, but not if it dominates most of our day. And we don't see those things that are coming in and stealing time for us while we're trying to achieve our purpose. And so, having a coach, that's what's really going to help you map out your day and understand where maybe that time that you're spending could be more valuable in another area of your life. So let me ask you this then, Patrick. As I'm listening to you, I can almost see where procrastination is also a stealer of
Yep.
time because you keep putting off the things that you do. So can you expound on maybe what some of the symptoms or the root causes of procrastination, and how do you help your clients overcome that?
Yep. So it's a great question. I know you mentioned it earlier, but thank you for bringing me back to this one because it's a big one. Uh, I think a lot of it is a habit, as you mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm.
It's at some point in our life there wasn't a lot going on, or we weren't as purpose driven maybe as you are now, and you're like, hey, I want to change my life, but procrastination's getting in the way. It's a habit like anything else. But a big part of what, if as I dig deeper and get down to the root as a coach, I find for a lot of people it's either one of two things. They're either afraid of what they have to do in order to get to where they want to go, and they're just, what's one where we have to remove those mental blocks, or number two, they find that, or I find that what they think they want to do might not be what they want to do, right? Or they're looking at it the wrong way. So they don't have a strong enough reason why they're doing what they're doing. Um, I'll give you an example. I find a lot of times people are like, well, I want to, what do you want out of working with me as a coach? Well, I want to increase my income by, $40,000 a year. Okay. And what's that going to help you do? And then they'll tell me, I want to buy a vacation home, or I want to buy a nicer car. A lot of times it's around financial things.
Mm-hmm.
And the more we work together, they continue to procrastinate. And I'll say to them point blank, I don't think the car is it. Like that doesn't mean that you won't buy the car and that you won't enjoy it, but that's not getting you out of bed. Like that's not getting you to do the hard things you're going to have to do to get where you want to go. So let's dig deeper. And usually when you dig a layer deeper, there's something more. Like the reason I want the vacation home is because I don't get to spend enough time with my children or my family. And that's what I started this business to do originally. And that hurts me. And it's like, oh, okay, now we're getting somewhere. So how about we keep that in front of ourselves every day rather than the house? The house doesn't really mean anything to you. It means something to you, but the deeper level of what it means is you want that. That to you represents, I want to go on vacation 3 times a year so I can invest more time with my kids or with my spouse or whatever. So those are the things that I get really deep on, because
Mm-hmm.
doing that creates the fire behind the drive that person's going to need to do the hard things. If they have a red hot why, as my business coach always calls it, it's very difficult to keep that person to knock that person off their game with the procrastination that may have been hanging around before, that may have been holding them back before. Because now they see the vision of, okay, I now know why I'm doing this. I'm reminded of why I'm doing it. And these things aren't going to get in my way anymore because I have to do the hard things in order to get there. And then it's just get working through the, you know, if you don't do these things, the opposite is what will it cost you? If you procrastinate and you
True.
never do the things, the hard things that we just talked about that you need to do, what's your life going to look like in 5 years? We talked about what we want it to look like in a year, 6 months, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. What will it look like if you spend the next 5 years the way you spent the past five? And most of the time, they don't like that exercise very much, but it
Right.
also gets them to go, oh, I really need to get rid of this habit in my life where I'm not doing the things that I need to do in order to get to where I want to go. So that's really it, is just getting them to picture what things look like if they do what they have to and what it looks like if they don't. And then really digging deep on why are they doing what they're doing, because that why is going to help them figure out the how, and they're going to knock down whatever obstacles in their way if they want it badly enough. That why should be something that's pulling them out of bed every morning, and it should be something that's like a magnet, sucking them toward, pulling them toward whatever it is that is their dream life.
No, that is great. And, just listening to you and in all of the areas that you coach, what do you find is the hardest message for people to hear, but the one they need the most?
Yeah, I'd say for most people, it's the mindset is the most important part, and it's also sometimes the hardest part to get someone to understand. They think that it's the strategies, that like I need to give me a silver bullet, and give me that golden, coin that's going to that jewel of wisdom that's going to change everything for me. And look, there are some times where I share something and someone goes, I've never thought of it that way, and that changes everything for me. But most of the time, it's something that happens over time. And usually it's talking to people about the things that they have to do in order to get to where they want to go and get the results they want. And let's face it, they probably already know. In most cases, it's rare that I tell someone that they're going to have to do something that they didn't know they were going to have to do. They just don't want to think about it, admit it, or face it, right? And they think that I'm
Right.
going to give them the magic wand that's going to get them past that. And it's like, no, you're going to have to network, or you're going to have to market, or you're going to have some sales conversations. We can shift how we look at that, but you're still going to have to do some hard things in order to get there. And I think that the more that we can recognize that, Les Brown's always said that, is one of my favorite speakers. And Les Brown's always said, if you do what's hard, your life becomes easy. But if you do what's easy, your life is going to be hard. And I think
Oh,
that's
that's
so
good.
true. I
That
love
is
that.
so good. That
One
says
of
it
my
all right
favorites.
there.
100%. And so, I'm probably a bit, you know, militant about how I am with my son in terms of what I try to put in his brain, and I'm not perfect at it. But one of the things, he knows he has his favorite book he likes to read every night. It's called Llama Llama Red Pajama. So some
Um,
parents may relate to this. I know the book by heart at this point. I don't even need the Braille copy, but he still brings it to me every night. And he knows I have two rules if we're going to read this book. Daddy has two rules. One, we're going to say our prayers, and number two, we're going to say our affirmations. And one of the most important affirmations, it's the one he says first, is my name is Logan. He says his name, and then he says, I do hard things,
oh,
right? Because I want him to get in the habit of, even if he doesn't 100% know what that means yet, I want him to have that in his brain that he does hard things. And so now he's gotten to the point that the first year it was like, he was two and he didn't really know what that meant. But now he's getting to the point where if one of his toys isn't working the way it's supposed to and he's trying to put it together, now he'll say, I do hard things. So it's starting to connect. And I think the more that any of us can have that as our mantra in the back of our head is, this is my name. It sounds silly, the affirmations, but my name's Patrick Engasser and I do hard things. Like if you have that as a mantra and you get to a point where you start to believe it, then life gets a whole lot easier, to Les Brown's point. It's if you're willing to do the hard things that are going to get you where you want to go, you're far more likely to end up there than if you're like, yeah, maybe I'll do it tomorrow, which is what, it's our default setting. We'll do it
yes.
tomorrow. But tomorrow is a day that never comes unless we decide it's today at some point. And we'll take our dreams, our hopes and dreams to the cemetery with us if we're not careful. Tomorrow will rob us of our dreams. And so it's something that I probably am, it's tough love sometimes when you're coaching with me. I try to always deliver it in a kind, respectful way, but sometimes we have to have hard conversations about what do we need to be doing that we're not doing, and what's it going to take in order for you to do that. And I find that when we're able to face that, which, thankfully the coaching members I'm working with, majority of the time we do face that, we come out, 3 months, 6 months, a year later with, hey, I remember that conversation and I'm so glad I started doing this even though I didn't want to, and you pushed me to do it because it was a game changer. So doing hard things is really one of the things that nobody wants to do. Whatever that is for you, we've got to, just kind of sometimes muscle up and do it.
Just saying that just sets you up for when the hard thing comes, you're reminded, I do hard things. I
Yeah.
can do this. So, gosh, I have so much I want to ask you. So, in closing, I'm going to share this quote from Napoleon Hill
Mm.
because I think about people who are listening now who are maybe in some type of adversity, maybe have tried something and there's been failure, or recovering from a heartache. Like life is hard, right?
Yeah.
And his quote, I think, is so powerful. It says, every adversity, every failure, every heartache carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. How would you inspire or give wisdom now to our audience who may be in one of those categories, adversity, failure, or heartache, to help them understand there is a seed still inside them? How can you help them find that seed?
Yeah, that's super powerful. And I 100% believe that to be true. And as human beings, none of us want to hear that, even if we allow ourselves to hear it. We're resistant to that when we're in the midst of adversity. And that's the hard part about adversity, is it's very difficult to believe when I'm going through something difficult that it's because God's using that, whatever it is, to shape me to mold me into a better version of myself and the person I was meant to be able to do better things, to be able to get further. Like the relationship that failed that you were sure, and most of us have had that at some point, at some level, a relationship that we were sure was going to last forever, was the right relationship. Um, and it isn't. And it isn't our decision to get out of it, and it didn't work out. Like that's really difficult in that moment to be like, yeah, but there's something better. And I feel like when people say that to us, like, yeah, now's not the time. Like, I don't want to hear that. And I think it's just a cliche. But in reality, I have found over and over again that all those times where I didn't want to hear it, God was really working in my life. And for me, if I was willing to be open to the idea that there was more and that this wasn't as good as it was going to get, that there was more beyond, beyond the horizon that I could quote unquote see. So I think for everybody out there who's listening, we all face adversity and challenges. It's just how are you going to see it? And I understand there's people who go through tragedy and really difficult traumatic situations. I'm not saying that you should wake up the next day and be like, I'm glad this happened. Like nobody's going to do that. And that would be outrageous for me to say that. That being said, I think even just as you said, having that feeling that there is some hope, that there is something positive that will come out of this, and knowing that that's the case, even if you can't see it now, which you probably can't, knowing that is the case is really important because as you start to pick up the pieces, um, or, if you say, hey, I failed at this, or, in business, or I failed at that, understanding you've learned. Like the first 2 years of my business was riddled with what some people would call failure. But in reality, I learned a ton during those 2 years. And if I didn't learn it, year three would have never happened with or without a coach.
Mhm.
So those experiences are what built, you know, my success later. We've all heard the sayings, one of my favorites, it's always, a rainbow only comes after the rain, right? We've heard that. But
Mhm.
just all of these cliches, as silly as they sound, especially when we're going through adversity, there's a reason why they exist and why they're said is because there's a lot of truth to what Napoleon Hill is saying here, which is yes, there's pain. We're human beings, we're emotional creatures. When things don't go the way we want or tragedy happens, we suffer. And it's okay to experience that. It's okay to spend some time really working through that. And sometimes you need somebody else to help you work through that. And it's okay to reach out and ask for that help. As a matter of fact, I think it's critical and
Hmm.
necessary in a lot of cases. But that being said, on the other side of it is we all have had an experience in the past that was negative when we were in it and later looked back and said, hey, as much as I really didn't like that part of my life, if it hadn't happened, the next thing wouldn't have happened. I'll give you a real quick example. My wife, her mother passed away when she was 24 or 25 years old. It was about 5, 6 months before we met. And the nurse who was taking care of her mother during the end of her life kept asking her like, are you dating anyone? Because they got to be pretty close because she talked to this lady all the time. And at some point she said, have you ever tried online dating? You really should try it. My wife had never tried online dating. She'd never given it any thought. And she ended up going on a website that I was on, and had that not happened, the two of us would have never met. So there's a really,
True.
really negative, very bad situation that nobody
Hmm.
would wish on anybody. At least I hope. And she would never have wanted that, and I never would have wanted that for her and her family. And yet, if that hadn't happened, it's a perfect example of what Napoleon Hill's talking about, the seed here. The one didn't exist without the other. We wouldn't know each other and we wouldn't be together and we wouldn't be married. We wouldn't have my 3-year-old son. So it's so difficult to look at it and say, hey, this pain is tied up with this great thing that's happened in our lives, but the two are inseparable. And so understanding that sometimes we have to go through these really dark times to come out better, and then allowing whatever it is that you believe. For me, it's God, or your life to shape you to prepare you for that better, and understanding that even though this doesn't have to be a happy time, you don't have to celebrate the bad, but that you're open to the fact that better can come from it. I'll tell you, my blindness is something that when I was 10, 15, 20 years old, I never would have said, hey, I'd go back and change it in a heartbeat if I could. Now, at this point in my life, I'm not so sure. And people ask me all the time, would you take your physical sight back if it was offered to you? I don't know. Because I'll tell you right now, I would not be the coach I am today without it. Because I've all my life, from learning how to brush my teeth without being able to see, had to do it differently. With figuring out how to tie my shoes, had to do it differently. And my parents didn't know how to teach me because they did it seeing. So, it was a work in progress. It was figuring out how to do things differently. How do I get from this place to this place for this business appointment? Well, I can't drive a car, so I guess I got to take the bus. I got to learn how to take this bus, then I got to learn how to take that one. Like, no, I'm not asking for empathy or for someone to,
Right.
to feel sorry for me. I'm saying those are things that ability to think on my feet and have to solve problems that nobody else has to solve. And, that's good that you don't have to. But for me, that prepared me to when someone comes to me who's a coaching member and says, hey, I have this challenge. I'm like, all right, we'll figure it out. Like, even if I don't have the answer right now, we're going to work on this. We're going to figure it out. And we always do. I believe I'm uniquely qualified and positioned. God positioned me in a way that I'm meant to do what I'm doing. And I can help people in a way that some people can't, because all my life I've been forced to be a problem solver and someone who thinks on my feet and thinks differently. And I would never have thought of that as an asset early on. But for me, it's probably my greatest asset, at least as a business coach now.
And I can see and understand why you are so uniquely qualified because you really did have to dig deep and find the answers because it wasn't easy. And just for that in itself, I just want to bless you, Patrick, for
Thank you.
your perseverance, your courage, your ability to find the good and find the purpose in all things, and also now helping others. And so, what is the best way for people to reach out to you, and how can they also get your book?
Yeah, great question. So thank you for asking. So PatrickEngasser.com is my website. That's last name is Engasser. because it's always misspelled. It is kind of spelled like it sounds though. And the best way if somebody wants to, and I don't offer this to everybody, but because I know you've carved out some time to sit down with me, which I really appreciate for your listeners specifically, if they go to talkwithpatrick.com, they can book a free strategy session with me. It's a 60-minute strategy session where they'll leave with a game plan of how to do what it is that they're looking to do. They may decide that they want to work with me further, but that's entirely up to them. Talkwithpatrick.com. I'll waive any fee I have on that. So when my administrator, Jonna, reaches out, after you book that time on my calendar, just let her know you came from Debbie's podcast because then she will not send you an invoice for that. It will be free. It's on me, just for Debbie's listeners. So talkwithpatrick.com and it takes you right to my calendar. Book a strategy session. I would love to work with you and see if I can help you in what it is that you're looking to overcome your challenges or how you're looking to grow in your business or work on the 80/20 rule or whatever it is. As for my book, you can get it on Amazon. It's called If I Can Do It, You Can Do It by my same name. Inspiration for eliminating excuses, overcoming challenges, and succeeding in business and life. You can also find it on my website, but Amazon's probably the quickest, easiest way to do it.
Well,
But
Patrick,
thank you
what a
so much for
gift.
having me on. It's been a real blessing. I hope it's made an impact on somebody, or at least, maybe shifted a thought that somebody has, because it's been a real blessing for me, and I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, it's been a blessing to have me as well. And I know this is the kind of episode you want to listen to several times because you've shared so much wisdom with us today, Patrick. And thank you for the gift for my audience. And audience, please do reach out to Patrick. I'm going to have all his information in my show notes. Just mention Debbie's podcast, the Transition Bridge podcast, for you to be able to receive this wonderful gift. And I just know you're going to come away from that session with Patrick with a plan and a new beginning. And so, Transition Tribe, I just want to thank you for being here with me today. And I'm going to end with this quote from Franklin Roosevelt: "The only limit to our realization of tomorrow is our doubts of today."
Mm.
So if you are doubting something, I want you to reach out to Patrick. I know he can help you. You can hear his heart, and he's highly skilled in what he's done, highly sought after as a motivational speaker. And I know he will help you get to the bottom of what it is that's preventing you from moving forward. So thank you for coming in because we always learn together about the purpose and the power of life's transitions.